love these movies. And I'm about to release part 1, Frankenstein Fever. I'm feeling it. Hey everybody, welcome back to this channel of mutating ghost stories and all kinds of haunted experiments. In anticipation of my latest project, my little homemade film of one of my favorite stories that I wrote last year about Frankenstein's monster meeting up with a mermaid in the frozen Arctic. I'm very proud of this story. It became a 2-parter, and I'm about to release part 1 either tomorrow or Friday, the day after tomorrow. And I think that I wanted to revisit some of the inspirational touchstones as I was writing that story last year. And one of those touchstones, which I was going on at length in my emails on my email list, was the haunted history or haunting history of the first 2 Frankenstein movies, which were in the 1930s. The first one was 31, and the second wasn't until I think the end of the decade, I think around 38. And yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because, you know, it's one of those fun things where you have this great project that you've been working on, and why not just indulge a little in the world of Frankenstein's monster. It is a huge part of our age. We are in the age of science, after all. Science helping humanity, and of course, science gone wrong. And both of these aspects inspired me, but I absolutely cherish the place in my heart that both of the movies have. And I wanted to start one very interesting factoid with Frankenstein, and the way we perceive it is, if I were to ask you your maybe 3 images that pop in your head visually about the monster Frankenstein, what would they be? I'm sure maybe one of them is the iconic face of Boris Karloff as the monster. There might be others, you know, I think we all have our own. But I'm sure somewhere along there, one of them would be the monster walking towards you with his arms outstretched, which is kind of an imposing, projective image, right? Well, that doesn't feature at all in Mary Shelley's original Gothic novel, masterpiece here. You should read it if you haven't. It is absolutely fantastic. I went into how much I love this book in a previous video. Now, another one could be, did it come from the movies? Well, Boris Karloff never did that. We all think of him with that kind of like, you know, emoting face, but he's not doing it either. He is kind of maybe uncoordinated, like a newborn child learning to walk, but he gets there pretty quick, and then he's kind of like standing or hulking or maybe awkward, but he's never doing this. And he doesn't do it in the sequel either. In fact, by the time the sequel comes out, he is actually a little more learned, and he's not totally naive. He is better at what he does. He gets angry. Boris Karloff, I don't know if you know this, not many people do, he was not the first choice for Frankenstein. You know who was? It's kind of obvious. It was the only actor who played a monster before him at Universal, which was Dracula. And that was Bela Lugosi. Now, Bela Lugosi turned down the role of Frankenstein because it was not a speaking role. He would just be grunting. And at that point, Bela Lugosi, he was a movie star, and he came from the stage, and he was like, hey, if you're not saying anything, there's no point. And this was probably a blunder. Who knows? I don't know what it would have looked like if he was the monster. But he turns it down, and Boris Karloff eventually takes it. Now, Boris Karloff wound up being made into a star by this role. He'd done a lot of credits before, but he winds up doing 3 movies. He does Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein. And then Karloff felt, hey, look, the character has finished his arc. 3 is a good number. I'm leaving now. And he goes on to have a wonderful career as an actor, one of the great movie stars of the age. You can look him up. I mean, what an amazing life. And he did a lot for the industry. Anyway, we get to number 4 in the franchise, and they don't have Boris Karloff, but they have Bela Lugosi. And Bela Lugosi at this time, not only has he seen the success of the monster, he has also run into constant money troubles, and he kind of needs this role. And Universal decides, let's do this. And they do, I believe it's Frankenstein versus the Wolfman, or Meets the Wolfman, which Bela Lugosi had a small role in the original Wolfman, by the way. I love these movies. So they made this strange little development in the film where Frankenstein's monster is blind and he talks. Now, that was partly a proviso, I'm pretty sure, for Bela Lugosi to do it, is that he talks. The problem is, Bela Lugosi was not the best with diction in terms of speaking English. He was Hungarian, and his accent on Dracula is iconic. It is beautiful. However, Dracula really haunts Bela Lugosi for the rest of his life. He couldn't date women without them wanting him to dress up like Dracula. And then he couldn't do any other roles because with that accent, he was always associated with Dracula. It was very hard for him to branch out, and he just wasn't really learning how to drop the accent. So, long story short, he's playing the monster Frankenstein. He's got the Dracula accent, and he's blind. And as an actor, he's going, well, this is how a blind man walks. And that's one half of it. They get to the film, and in the editing room, they're like, this is not working. His lines are just not working. It's turning it into too much of a comedy here. And they wind up cutting his dialogue. All of his dialogue. And it was explained that he's blind in his dialogue. And for whatever reason, they did not add other scenes to explain it. I don't know why, but the movie comes out and audiences just see him doing this all the time. And they don't know why. And he's blind. And it just kind of gets this comedic feel anyway. You can imagine maybe Halloween rolls around, the next Halloween rolls around, and this has started to take shape. People do charades, they do Halloween costumes, and you get to do this all the time. And this starts to figure into zombies several decades later, or mummies. Even though I'm pretty sure when Boris Karloff played the Mummy, which is an absolute great movie, I'm not sure that he really was doing that per se. Anyway, that's where that comes from. It comes from an offshoot of a sequel that was based on a book. And it had nothing to do with the original source material. It had nothing to do with the original movie. It was based on the wild kind of vacuous nature that sequels do to their original, masterpieces, which is very interesting. That film, Frankenstein and the Wolfman, really has no other, in my opinion, other reason to be remembered other than that. So that's pretty interesting, right? Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about Boris Karloff, who a lot of people don't know this because he is made a star in the film Frankenstein, but it wasn't his first role. It wasn't one of his first roles. It was his first major role. He was an East Indian descent actor in the UK, and he didn't have a lot of opportunity. He was a stage actor, UK, but as a man who had the instincts of the age, he understood that he needed to go somewhere else when a thing wasn't working. And he winds up going to Hollywood, and he just, on top of his theater experience, he starts getting into acting on film, and he's doing all these little roles. By the time he gets discovered one day at the Universal commissary having coffee by director James Whale, who was looking for an actor because they had lost Bela Lugosi, remember? And when that happened, the original director was canned, and they gave the project over to James Whale. By the way, great movie about James Whale, Gods and Monsters, starring Ian McKellen, Sir Ian McKellen. You should check it out. It's pretty fun. Anyway, James Whale discovers this very striking, tall, good-looking man with penetrating eyes. Remember, he's East Indian. And he winds up giving him the shot. Now, at that time, Boris Karloff is overdue for success. He's a caged animal. He's done 81 films. Pretty amazing. By the way, Boris Karloff is not his actual name. It's a stage name. His original name is William Pratt. Yeah. But they figured they needed something sinister. Back then, that was kind of the deal. He's unknown. No one's going to see this coming. He's this monster. And the actor is named Boris Karloff, as opposed to William Pratt. Pretty interesting times. And then, ever the humble actor, he takes on this role where he's got to put an insane amount of experimental makeup. He doesn't really get rest. He has to be there at the beck and call. He's working 14, 18-hour days. These conditions were so bad, Boris Karloff ends up helping to found the Actors Union, by the way. He was quite a guy. But he has these penetrating eyes. And he's got all this experience working with his body. And he winds up making probably the first great physical, silent, emotive role of cinema in the talkies era. And he endures all of this. And of course, the monster is just frightening. Teenagers love it. Everyone loves it. And he starts working in films constantly after that. He stars in The Mummy, among others. It's like, I can't even remember the names of the others. And meanwhile, Hollywood and Universal they keep trying to get James Whale back in for a sequel, but James Whale, we learn, is a total artist. And he comes from theater himself. He was a shoe cobbler. I think he had been divorced. He was in the war. He fought the Germans. He even had, he was a POW. And when he was a POW, he put on little theater plays for the soldiers. I mean, the guy was over-credentialed, overqualified by the time Frankenstein came along. And he winds up doing it, and he kind of fought with the studios because he saw the potential when he was adapting this beautiful romantic book by Mary Shelley into a film. And the studios kind of wanted it to be more sensational, and they kind of saw what worked in the Dracula movie, and they wanted to get more of the scary stuff, but they didn't really go into the pathos and the pain of the monster. And when they finally agree to what James Whale wants, and James Whale has done films by then for about a decade, we get The Bride of Frankenstein, and then you really see what an artist, what a storyteller James Whale is. Because he starts making it about loneliness. I mean, remember Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein. He starts working on this idea of a love story, but he also starts working on the madness of science. He brings in this other doctor, Dr. Pretorius, who's kind of a mad scientist villain. And there's speculation about James Whale's homosexuality being a metaphor in the film, though his partner at the time was saying that was not James. James was an artist first. He didn't put his agenda onto his films. So who can say? Because it's very tempting to watch it and kind of go there. But at the same time, it's just such a wonderful, beautiful film. I mean, I think the word sublime really applies to The Bride of Frankenstein. It is one of the best films. It's one of the best sequels ever because it's definitely superior to the original. I love that. And yeah, so anyway, I think that, you know, the movies in Frankenstein are very fascinating little chapters of early Hollywood in themselves, especially when we're watching the demise of Hollywood now. Everything is flopping, and talk about agendas. I mean, every time a movie has to hit its audience on the head with a crazy agenda that really has nothing to do with the source material, it flops. I mean, over and over, it's like clockwork. None of them work. And I think that that was part of what made the early ages of Hollywood so successful, is that, yeah, they had their own agendas to keep narratives going, but in the end, the movies united people. It was a place where people could come together to escape into a world. And I think that we don't have that these days. Anything could change. I would like to think that this sentiment gets dated years later, but there is nothing quite like these films. And also, since I brought up Bride of Frankenstein, I do got to mention Elsa Lanchester, who played the bride. She is iconic. Everyone knows what the Bride of Frankenstein looks like, but she's hardly in the film. She has two wonderful roles in there. She gets to play Mary Shelley in the beginning during the Summer of Darkness, which I talked about in my previous video. And I'll put a link in the description. And she, of course, plays the bride, which is at the crescendo of the film. And you think it's named Bride of Frankenstein. She's in there. Everyone knows about her. But there's a lot of talk leading up to her. And then there's the reveal. And then they try to bring her close together with the monster. And, you know, the end of the film is not far off from there. So that's pretty much all she is. But wow, when they say no small roles, only small actors, that is one of the best examples. She came from theater herself. Man, all of the actors back then had theater background, and it was beautiful. Now they're just little, you know, opportunists, and they just, you know, they get a few auditions, and then boom, you're in a film. Oh, for those days when you had a trial by fire on the stage in front of the footlights. And by the time you got to a film, you were like a caged animal. Just let them loose, and then they got all this energy. It was just a beautiful thing. Anyway, James Whale had said he picked her because it was like she had the Fae in her, which, I mean, when you look at her, yeah, obviously, it's very true. And she also had in her own right, she had a theater company for children, and so she was surrounded by it, and she just came with all these cool choices. I always get a kick out of seeing her rendition of the bride. Of course, she had a great career as a character actor till, I don't know, I think it was into the 70s or the 80s, I don't remember. But yeah, just phenomenal talent all around. And just, again, it's anticipation of this story, which I cannot wait to share. Like I said, it's coming out either tomorrow evening, tomorrow or Friday or something, but imminent. I'm so excited, so thrilled. And I'm just going to be putting all kinds of stuff out there because this is the year of Frankenstein, I think, which is a beautiful thing. I will be actually re-releasing my writings of the history of Frankenstein, both Mary Shelley's history, the book, and the films on my Substack. So I'll be putting links in the description, and you can check those out. And it's going to be all kinds of fun. Anyways, Frankenstein fever. I'm feeling it. And of course, if you're interested in supporting me in any way besides this, you can check out ghostinthegaslight.com. And my art is there, originals. You have prints. You can get all kinds of cool swag if you want to wear it, if you want to drink from it. All kinds of fun stuff. ghostinthegaslight.com. And of course, there'll be more links in the description. And of course, sign up to my inbox curiosities, my emails. I'm actually putting out a nice little series of mermaid stories right now, which I'm about to finish that one. So anyway, just wanted to get on here and share all this wonderful stuff with you. And if you enjoyed this, maybe you will enjoy this one right here.